I'm Ed Amoroso from Tag Cyber, and I'm here with my friend Debbie Gordon, who's the founder and CEO of a very cool cybersecurity company called CloudRange. Debbie, welcome to New York.
Thank you, Ed.
Nice to see you. We're going to talk all about your company and the things you guys do, but maybe just for people watching, real quickly summarize, what is it that you guys do?
So CloudRange provides simulation training for security professionals. We don't do end user training. We're focused on SOC analyst and incident response training in a simulated environment. And the whole premise of CloudRange is that people don't have the ability to practice addressing cyber attacks. It just doesn't exist. And so we have to create their ability to be able to practice in a simulated environment.
They do it as a team, right?
They can do it as a team and they can do it as individuals, but just as security teams work together, they need to train in an environment that feels and looks like how they're working day to day, which is usually in a team.
Right. That sounds good. Hey, I got to ask you, how did you get into this area? What prompted you to get into starting this company?
So I was doing some work with a very large technology manufacturer that has a very well-known SIM product, and we found that they were having sales challenges because their customers, large enterprise customers, had budget to buy their product. They had the desire to buy their product, but they were not buying it because they would say, we don't have enough trained people to actually run our SOC. And so they needed a way to accelerate the experience of SOC analysts so that they'd actually be able to perform in a SOC. And so we realized that product training doesn't do it, and traditional industry certifications don't do it because they're much more either theoretical or mechanical, if you will. There was nothing out there to allow SOC analysts to be able to practice in a multi-vendor environment, in a protected environment, to allow them to actually detect, respond, and remediate cyber attacks in a practice environment versus waiting for the real thing to happen to realize they don't actually know what to do.
Interesting. How long ago was this when you made that recognition?
So that was just over 2 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So it's right around the time that we started using the term SOC more generally, because before that it was kind of all over the map.
Right.
And I'll bet even today you probably deal with some people that may not even reference what they're doing as quote unquote SOC.
Yeah.
Right? Interesting. So when you decided to do this, was the idea that, is simulation the essence of this, sort of like creating a circumstance that, was that the idea?
Yeah, so simulation is so important. So just like in aviation and in medicine, even in sports, we have to practice in an environment that looks and feels like the real thing.
Yeah,
and
pilots get in a simulator.
Pilots go in a flight simulator. I certainly wouldn't want to get in an airplane where the pilot got straight A's in flight school but had never flown in a flight simulator.
Right.
So it's the same thing with cybersecurity. People can have a lot of certifications and a lot of letters after their name and many years of experience, but what is that experience and how do you quantify it? So by using simulation, we can prepare people for an unlimited number of cyber attacks, which are infinite and ongoing. We're developing new scenarios all the time, and we can measure how effective individuals are and how effective a team is. Because unless you have data, as Deming says, you're only a person with an opinion. So we have to have data on the reduction of dwell time of these cyber attacks, and we're able to do that using our technology.
Interesting. Now, how did you kind of know to start a company? Had you been running companies before that? How'd you get into that?
Yeah, so I guess people call me a serial entrepreneur. I've had several companies. My most recent one was a data security IT asset management company. I sold that in 2016. So I started CloudRange 2 years ago. It was actually less than 2 years ago. And it really, the big goal for CloudRange, and just the message I think is important that I want people to hear, is that simulation hasn't been a standard in the industry. And so when we look ahead, we want to make it a standard, and our customers, who are primarily Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies, and managed security service providers, once they begin doing simulation, it becomes part of their DNA. They can't not do it, because especially with cyber attacks, there's always more, and there's always the unknown, and so you have to continue practicing. It's not just a one-time thing where you go practice it and get a certification and then you're done. It's like sports, where you have to continue practicing to become prepared.
How hard is it to come up with realistic scenarios? Because I would imagine in banking versus manufacturing versus telecom, they're also different. Like, do you tailor to that, or how do you create the scenarios that you work
So
with?
we have a lot of scenarios already developed. Most of our customers will actually start off with ones that we have developed. They're anything from SQL injections to ransomware to Trojan data leak. There are many of them.
Is there like a backstory that you create to the thing? Or you keep it pretty straight?
It's the how the attack plays out is discussed after the fact.
I see.
In a debrief.
Because they don't know.
Right, they don't know.
That's a fair point.
And so when
Okay.
somebody goes into a simulation exercise, which usually lasts about 4 hours, and it's not on their network, it's an enterprise network that we have, they don't know what they're looking for.
I see.
So it's
You're
it's very
exposing little
realistic.
bits and pieces as they go along. Is that how you do
So
it?
it's just like somebody looking at alerts in a real environment. They're looking at alerts using a real sim. They have to decide what to do with the alerts and act on that. And so every step that they take which aligns with a run book, their run book, hopefully, they're measured on the time it takes to do that. And so back to your question, though, about how we develop scenarios. So we have a lot developed already. We work with our customers to develop unique scenarios based on how they may be traditionally vulnerable in their industry, where threats may typically come from. And then we're also working proactively with some companies who are our partners to get data on types of attacks that may not have hit the front page yet. And so we're getting ahead of those, and so our customers can be confident that they are practicing on these different attacks, which may not be what everyone's hearing about every day, but they are what some of the incident response companies are seeing that are going to be more prevalent.
Is the goal just kind of learning, or is there usually some targeted metric, like do it within this amount of time or this many things? How does that work? Like, how are you sort of grading? I know it is a flight simulator, you can crash, right? But how would you do it with a SOC team?
The way, just to kind of set up how it works, every mission, we call them, is an attack scenario. And for practical reasons, a team usually spends 3 to 4 hours dedicated to logging in. It's a remote login, and they know that they're going to experience an attack. They don't know what it is, and so as soon as the different milestones are hit in the detection, response, and remediation, each of those has scores associated with them, and they're timed. So they get different scoring based on objective things like the time and the relative time between steps. And then also what's very important is soft skills. This is something that is very difficult to be measured in we hear AI everywhere. You can't realistically and practically measure soft skills as a team in AI. So it's very important that in sessions where we have one of our facilitators in there, that they are measuring how well each person not only acts but communicates. Because as you know, you've run SOCs before, you know that it's not just what each person does, it's how they work as a team, and that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And that's one of the things that we've found that is, I think, the most enlightening, at least to me, is to see that can, within a SOC team, that can be the weakest link in the chain, is the lack of communication. They can have the greatest skills individually, but if they're not communicating and saying, hey, I've seen this. What do you guys think about if we do this, this, or this, and communicating what they're doing so that they're not replicating things unnecessarily. They're not, and they have to act as a team. So the soft skills are measured also, and then each session they get graded on the time, detection, response, and remediation time, soft skills, and then there's some other metrics that we grade them on as well.
Now, you and I did a little survey. We were trying to figure out, in my mind, I was trying to understand the frequency with which these types of things would be done. I was actually surprised by the results. Why don't you share with us what you hear from your clients in terms of the typical sort of duration between these different missions that they might run?
Sure. So when we first mention simulation to people, often the first thing they think about is a tabletop exercise.
Yeah.
And that may have been the first thing that came to your mind.
Yeah.
And in a traditional tabletop exercise, that's when you have the CEO, the CISO, the chief legal officer, or somebody from marketing and communications, PR, and they're all responding to an incident that has happened. And
usually some big scary nation state thing.
Exactly.
Blow up a power
and
plant.
the FBI comes and runs in and says, "Hey, we found your customers' data on the dark web." So that's, up until now, that's what people think about when they think of an incident response simulation, because they're responding to it. But what we have done is we take everything that happens before that, so not assuming the breach has already happened, but from when it's detected all the way through to the remediation. Now, to answer your question about the frequency of this, so traditionally, a tabletop exercise is done once a year, which I think, or twice a year in some cases.
Because it's a big
deal.
thing.
You have to plan that, and that is not what we do. And so that's why I want to clarify.
There's legal involved.
So when you did the survey, and you thought, I think you thought, oh, I can't see how people would do this more than once a year.
You were right.
I told you I was going to be right, because I knew, and I say that because this is what our customers need. Our customers, a best practice is once a month. And the reason for this is, first of all, once a month is a rhythm. People like habit. And so when a SOC team or an incident response team knows that the third Thursday of every month in the morning they're going through a simulation, is something they look forward to. And I'm going to come back to that part of it in a second. But then also the more frequent they do it, the more attack types they have been able to practice on. And so let's just say there's 25 types of attacks. Well, you can do one a year for 25 years, or you can learn a whole lot more once a month and just keep going. And so it becomes rhythm. And what happens is it becomes part of the company's DNA. It becomes part of the culture of practicing. Which also is very reflective in where budget is coming from. A lot of times this is not coming from training budget. It's coming from the IT budget and the technology budget. So it's very interesting how that is.
And you say people look forward to this. Huh?
They do. And so when you think about training, the word training, people roll their eyes and death by PowerPoint.
Guilty.
Right. And it's an obligation typically. What we have been able to do is give people the opportunity to practice what they think they may already know but are too afraid to do it in their own production environment. And so most of our customers, and I've been actually really appreciative of this, most of our customers, and I'm specifically thinking of some Fortune 100 CISOs who have said, I think we should do this, but let's see what our team thinks. And we'll have them go through a real exercise, and we let them decide. And I appreciate the leaders who look to their teams because they don't want to force training on them. And so and the people love it. We've heard this is the best way to spend time, it's the best way to learn, and we watch people come out of their shells. We watch people do things that they thought they know how to do, but they never had the chance to try. And we see them blossom in terms of their communications. And with the skills shortage and the inability for companies to hire people. That also means that retention is a challenge.
It is.
This helps with retention, and we're collecting data that shows that people enjoy their jobs more when they know what they're doing and they can actually practice. So there's all these ancillary things that have come out of it.
Now, how do you develop these things? You must have a pretty smart team. I'm trying to think how I would do it, and I would think it would be tough because you're dealing with really capable SOC teams, and they're not going to put up with some dumb little thing. They're going to want something substantive. How do you do that? You must have some pretty smart
We have
cookies
some
on
very
team.
smart people.
Yeah.
The people who are in charge of delivery in Cloud Range, the people who are doing the training, facilitation, and content development, these are people who are very experienced. They've built and run SOCs. We have, former CISOs. These are people who know what they're doing. They're not just following a process. They have the experience. And they love it.
You must be doing a zillion of these, like a lot of them during the year, right?
We're doing
I guess
a
you
lot.
could maybe reuse, or like you may have some canonical examples.
Yeah, we
that
don't
can be
have to
tailored
reinvent the wheel for
yeah.
every customer. What is unique?
But with a customer doing it monthly, you got to do at least 12 that year.
Oh, we
right?
have,
Can't do the same ones.
we have plenty.
Right? Yeah.
And we have the ability to make them, even a specific scenario, we can make more or less complex just by the amount of real traffic we inject into it, things that could confuse the user. So, and it really depends on their skills and their roles. So each session, each mission stands alone, but they're each part of a continuum of learning, meaning that every session is going to be based on what that team did in the last one and how they learned and how effective they are, because the ultimate goal is for them to learn and become better and more prepared.
It's really interesting. So what's the plan, like moving forward? Does it just get bigger, or do you think there'll be different kinds of things you're doing? Does automation play a role here? What are you planning for kind of the future?
So automation is an interesting word. We have seen that as much as we can automate things, the analogy is that we like to teach people how to do math before we give them a calculator. Because it's important that people see why things happen and how they happen.
Manual kind of thing. Yeah, I agree with that.
And we've watched the impact of that. So where we are focusing, we're doing a lot with managed security service providers because, as you know, that's where a lot of companies are outsourcing. And so for MSSPs, when they're doing simulation exercises, they can actually become more competitive by showing their customers different metrics on dwell time.
That's good.
And so it's not just their ability to detect and respond to cyber attacks, it's their ability to differentiate in the marketplace and get customers. Because 2 years ago, MSSPs were not competitive with each other because there just weren't that many, and now they have to think about how they're going to differentiate. So this is one way.
I'm feeling a tweetable moment coming up here. You should
tweet away.
Tell the people here, what should an enterprise team ask of their MSSP? You should probably ask them to be doing this,
They should. So if you are outsourcing, what is your MSSP doing? And most of the time, Ed, we see an MSSP says, we have 20 analysts with a combined 100 years of experience. Well, what is that experience and how do you measure that? And so we're able to provide metrics. And so if you can imagine, badges, digital badges, for example. Imagine how many digital badges a team can collect on different types of attacks and be able to show that to their customers, saying we're being proactive. So,
that's really good. I love that idea. Like right in the supply chain, there ought to be a question, do you train? I don't think I ever wrote that requirement. That's not a bad idea.
Yeah, right. So. And it's now becoming a thing.
What about automation as part of the simulation? I would think that that's probably a big chunk of what you do, meaning having connections to different types of systems and feeds and stuff as part of the training. You probably do that now.
So just like, I'll go back to the flight simulator. You want a pilot to train in a flight simulator that looks like the plane that they're going to be flying, right? If they're going to be flying a Boeing 747, you want the buttons and everything to look and feel the same. And it's the same thing in simulation. So we customize the environment so that if a customer is using a specific SIM, a specific firewall, and various other tools, that we configure that environment for
good.
them so that that's what they understand already,
Yeah.
and they're not focusing on how to use the SIM. They're focusing on what to do with the information that comes out of it. And so that's one of the things that differentiates Cloud Range, because we're able to create that custom environment without companies having to invest in any infrastructure. That's all in our infrastructure, and they can access it remotely without having to manage anything themselves.
If people watching want to get more, is the website a good place to go? Is that the best place to get information?
Website's a good place, yep. Our website is cloudrangecyber.com.
Okay. And you are in Nashville?
Based in Nashville. We've got offices in Houston and Toronto and Spain and Florida.
Wow, those are all good places.
They are good places.
And I would imagine you cover the whole...
We cover the whole world, yeah. We've got distributors all over the world and resellers. We sell through the channel as well. And our platform is accessible anywhere. And so that's what makes it nice, especially for distributed teams. They don't have to assemble in a place. And it also eliminates the requirement for any infrastructure and administration, because not every company wants to own a cyber range. They want to use them, and so we provide that.
You enjoying running the company?
It's great. We have an amazing team, for one thing, and we are doing something that people actually need and solving a human problem. This isn't just another Band-Aid, it's not another technology, it really is a solution, and the skills shortage is not going to fix itself. And so we use the term that we manufacture experience, and it's just necessary because people can't keep up.
Well, you and your team have a lot of enthusiasm and energy, and you guys are always very, very up and ready to go. Really nice to see. Well, keep doing the good work that you're doing.
Thank
you. It helps our industry. We appreciate everything that you do.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Thanks for coming by New York.
Thank you.
Very good.
Good.
And we will see you next time.